author of 2 books of fiction. The first, Use Me, which was a finalist for the PEN/Hemingway Award, a New York Times notable book, and a Los Angeles Times Best Book of the Year, and more recently, one of my favorites, Blueprints for Building Better Girls, which the Boston Globe called electrifyingly alive, funny, and thrillingly honest. Blueprints for Building Better Girls was also chosen as one of the best books of 2011 by the San Francisco Chronicle, the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, and O Magazine. Elissa has been called an effortless stylist and a comic writer with impeccable timing. Her prose so agile and deft, her sentences sound like the riffs of a recklessly funny friend. She is also wonderfully prolific. In addition to her 2 books of fiction, Elissa is the co-editor of 2 anthologies, The Friend Who Got Away and Money Changes Everything. She is a contributing editor and the hot tape columnist for Vanity Fair, and the editor-at-large of Tin House Magazine, which she co-founded with her husband, Rob Spillman. Elissa's nonfiction has appeared in Vogue, Spin, the New York Times Book Review, and the Paris Review. Her fiction and essays have appeared in Bomb, One Story, and Nerve, among others, and in anthologies like The Mrs. Dalloway Reader and Bound to Last. She currently lives in Brooklyn with her family, and as it was said in The Rumpus, more hats than she can count. It is my honor to introduce Elissa Schappell.
That was a very lovely intro. Thank you. And thank you all for waiting for me. I am never late for things. My grandmother used to say to me, you know, don't be late for things because it gives people time to think about your other inadequacies on top of being a tardy person. And I wish that whoever sponsored this evening also provided a little bit of Klonopin or Xanax, something that I could just have, you know, right in my veins right now would be swell. But no, I'm very grateful to you for coming and for staying. It's really great. I appreciate it. So I'm going to read a little bit of this story, The Joy of Cooking, and then afterwards talk about whatever you want to talk about. I was halfway out the door when the phone rang. Another person would have let the machine pick up, but you know how it is when you're a mother. Thank God you're there, my daughter Emily said, sounding out of breath. I am, but sweetie, I'm in a bit of a rush. No, wait, don't go, she cried. Please, Mommy, I'm begging you. I just need one thing. I looked at the clock. It was 4. Yoga started at 4:30. My doctor had recommended, this is how you know this is fiction. My doctor had recommended it for stress reduction and the pain I've been having in my hips. After yoga, provided I wasn't bleeding or paralyzed, I was planning to pop into the drugstore and buy some new lipstick. Something youthful but sophisticated with shimmer. My mother always said that a woman should have a signature lipstick the way a man has a signature cocktail. I had been married and divorced to Emily's father, Terry, in Cherries in the Snow. After that, I was going to treat myself to a long overdue haircut at Sheer Delight. Something new, possibly even a little racy. I've been toying with the idea of bangs. Then at 6:30, I was meeting Hugo, the new man shelving the philosophy section at the bookstore where, for the last 15 years, I've been working as a cashier and bookkeeper. It was just coffee, but let's just say it had been a long time between cups of coffee. 1,825 days to be exact. 5 years, not that I was counting. Emily cleared her throat theatrically. Well, you'll just have to wait a minute, Mother. I have an announcement to make. Today, she paused, I became a woman. Emily was 24. I bought a chicken, I did, with legs and everything. Really? You see, Emily didn't cook. She chopped salad, she sliced fruit and poured brewer's yeast on popcorn. She went to restaurants where she tortured the waiters with special orders, everything steamed, sauce on the side, and then ultimately returned half of it. Emily had been anorexic for almost half her life. I assumed she meant a dead chicken. I have a suitor. It sounded like she said, suture. Slap a steak on a black eye, a chicken breast with stitches. I wish I didn't think this way. A suitor, Mommy, a gentleman caller. She sighed as though she might faint from the mere pleasure of saying the word. Emily had often lectured her sister Paige and me on the subject of love, saying, when Percy Shelley, the poet, drowned, Mary Shelley carried his burnt-up heart in her handbag for the rest of her life. In her handbag. That's real love. That's what I'm waiting for. I wondered how long before that heart started to stink. You mean a boyfriend? Emily had admirers, mostly older men she met through the art museum where she worked. Elderly patrons who enjoyed the company of a slight, pale-skinned girl with dark, preraphaelite hair, able to converse about romantic poetry, Renaissance art, and classical music through drinks and intermission. But she never had boyfriends. It was understood she didn't like to be touched. He's been wooing me for a few weeks now, and I thought it was time I made him dinner because that's what you're supposed to do, right, Mommy? Cook? She took a deep breath. Which is why I called. I need you to give me the family recipe. I could tell she was biting her nails, biting them down to the pink. She would eat her nails, chew the skin off her fingers, but you couldn't get her to eat a hot dog. Mommy, is there something wrong? No, I'm just surprised. A few weeks, we spoke every day, 2 times, sometimes 3 times a day, and she never once mentioned she was dating someone. Do you promise? Otherwise, I'd have to, I don't know, throw myself under a train or walk into a river with stones in my pockets or something. Or something. I promise, I'm your mother. You just caught me with one foot out the door, and I'm meeting someone tonight for a drink. I waited for an interrogation. Someone who? Emily had a gift for zeroing in on the shortcomings in men I would normally turn a blind eye to. So can you give me the recipe now, Mommy, now? I don't know what you're talking about. Seriously, Mother, are you claiming there is no family recipe? Because Paige told me there was. Emily said this as though she had caught me in a lie. Paige said the other night that while the 2 of you were having dinner alone together, she paused meaningfully, jealousy lurking in her voice like a maniac with a hammer. She said you gave it to her. The chicken I had made from Paige wasn't from a family recipe or even out of a cookbook. It was something I saw a friend's mother do years ago. I was surprised I even remembered it. You see, the closest I had ever come to inheriting a recipe from my mother was rescuing her copy of The Joy of Cooking out of a box she had packed up to donate to the church after my father died. Ha! My mother had said, they ought to call that one No Joy in Cooking. It had been the only cookbook my mother ever needed while my father was alive. All the dishes he required, beef stroganoff, pork chops, Hawaiian chicken, even the vanilla icebox cake, which my mother made for my birthday year after year, insisting it was my favorite. All 4 had come from that book. The recipe for the chicken I had made Paige was so simple I could have just told it to her. In her first year of pre-med, she had memorized all 206 bones in the human body, including the ones that babies are born with that later disappear. Still, I had written it out on a recipe card carefully, in my very best keep this for posterity script. Secret. Puncture a lemon several times with a fork and insert it inside the bird. This will keep it moist. You see, Paige wouldn't know about the lemon. That was something I could give my daughter who didn't need me. A lemon. I practically had to stalk Paige for the recipe. Emily complained. I literally had to call her 10 times. God knows where she was. Finally, at 7 in the morning, she picked up. Even said so. She said all she could remember were the ingredients and not the proportions. So you see, Mommy, you really have no choice. You have to help me. I shrugged off my coat and put down my keys. Did you get the lemon? What lemon? She left out the lemon. That is so like her. It's just a silly lemon. It's not important. If Paige forgot, it was most likely tiredness. Or perhaps spite. No, it has to be good. It has to be just as good as the recipe you gave Paige. No, it has to be better. It will be, I promise. For Emily, it would always have to be better. You're the best mommy in the world, you know that? I'll make it easy. Good. Because remember, I'm no good with numbers. This was a lie. Emily was obsessed with numbers. The lower, the better. For years, the goal was to keep herself under 200 calories a day. She had tried to stop counting, but it was hard. Old habits don't die with sudden aneurysm efficiency. They go in and out of comas, existing for years on life support. Why don't I just come over, sweetie? No, I can do it, she said firmly, and then shrieked, "Ah! It's slimy. The legs won't stay closed. I'm putting on rubber gloves. Oh, bad chicken. Slutty chicken. It is so disgusting. I can't even look at it. I think I'm going to be sick." My Emily, who loved horror movies, who giggled through the shower scene in Psycho, was horrified at the sight of a raw chicken. Hold it steady in the sink, I said. Turn on the water, not too hot, just lukewarm, and wash it gently. There's no need to scrub. Soap? No soap. Just pat it dry. I could have been teaching her how to wash a baby. Then there was a loud thud and the sound of the phone being dropped. Oh, no, I dropped it. It squirted right out of my hands. Just pick it up and start over. It was a good thing it wasn't a baby. Her voice broke. I can't do this. Yes, you can. I wanted her to do it herself. It was time. She ought to be able to make a damn chicken. You'll need to preheat the oven, sweetie, to 350 degrees. I stopped. It was my call waiting. Loud and insistent. I knew Emily could hear it too. So did you ever cook for Daddy when you were courting? She pressed on, ignoring the sound as she always did. I checked my caller ID. It was Paige. Of course, I said, we did that sort of thing back then. You think chicken is good, right? Chicken is good. The phone beeped once more and then stopped. I poured myself more wine. Oh, good. I thought so. Emily's voice eased. Coq au vin, I said. That was the first meal I ever made your father. He had come to my apartment. It was tiny with a galley kitchen not even big enough for two people to stand. I made it from a recipe in a woman's magazine. The pearl onions, the red wine, the French name, it all seemed so sophisticated until the chicken turned purple. Emily groaned. Oh, that's completely and utterly disgusting. I misread the directions and poured in 3 times the amount of Cabernet. Your father and I got drunk off that meat. I'm sorry, Mother, that is not exactly romantic. It was, though. Terry was the most charming, handsomest man who had ever wanted me. He played guitar and dreamed of sailing around the world. He kissed my ears. He called me baby. He was rich with $1 million ideas. We married at 23. It was the 70s. Even then, it seemed young. The marriage lasted 13 years. 13 is the lace anniversary. My husband gave me a divorce. My mother and father were married at 23. It was the 40s, so it would have seemed old. The marriage lasted 40 years. 40 is the ruby anniversary. 40 trumps 13. My mother got a gold necklace with a ruby drop, a bead of blood at her throat. For 40 years, my mother ignored my father tooting his horn and whistling at women on the street, endured him placing his hand on the behinds of hundreds of waitresses and shop girls. 40 years he held her tongue, twisted her napkin in her lap, glaring murderously at me any time I dare look at her with anything close to pity. I am 48 and I can still fit into my old wedding dress. Every year I try it on to try and gauge how my body has changed. It's a little tight around the middle. But if I gave up my nightly glass, or 2, or sometimes 3 of wine and started running again, or did yoga, it would fit. At 24, Emily is 1 year older than I was when I had her. Paige is 2 years younger than Emily. Paige kayaks and sails and ran a marathon for fun. I never worry about her. Emily boasts of her great eating habits, attention to nutrition. She walks everywhere. I worry about her breaking a bone. Estimated number of times Emily calls me, 20. Exact number of times a week she calls her father, 1. On Sunday, long distance from my home. 0 is the number of times that Emily has, to my knowledge, entertained a man in her apartment. The number of times Emily has cooked for me, also 0. I do the math. It all adds up. Okie dokie, Emily says. Step 1 of the stuffing is completed. I'm done with the carrots and celery. Celery is a staple of my daughter's diet. It has 6 calories and chewing burns 10. If you stop eating sugar, carrots taste like candy. So now the onion, I say. I hear her blade cutting fast, like she thinks if she chops really fast, she can outdistance the tears. I'm afraid she's going to cut herself. Gee, this is so much fun, she says. Or maybe it only feels that way because I'm in love. Love? The word stuck like a bone in my throat. I despise the word stuffing, don't you, Mommy? Why would anyone eat anything that promised to stuff them? I sensed her shiver. So now I'm just supposed to pack this mess in that hole? Don't overfill it. It expands. She laughed. Will it explode? I almost wish that would happen. What would her Prince Charming do? Would he laugh it off? Would he take her in his arms and tell her not to worry? Would he insist they salvage the bird and then afterwards say, "Oh, baby, that was delicious"? Or would he judge her? Would he scowl and make a mental note? Not wife and mother material, can't have poultry blowing up left and right. Someone could lose an eye. "Emily," I said, "maybe I could just tell the recipe to you and you could write it down." "Ah, pardon me. I just thought in light of these extraordinary circumstances, Mother, you might want to help me." "I do want to. I'm sorry. The phone, it's just hard this way." "Forget it, Mother. I'm letting it go." She took a deep breath. "Because," she said, "did I mention that I'm in love?" 50 was the estimated number of lovers Terry had during our marriage. He didn't offer this number with remorse or grief or pride, but more like a seasoned tax attorney. He delivered the information to me because, he said, it's been weighing on my conscience for too long. As though his conscience were a beach chair groaning under the fat ass of his indiscretion. Every year for a decade after we split, I got an AIDS test. Did I mention that I'm in love? Terry's second wife is 35, 13 years younger than me, and they have 2 boys, Emily, Paige, and I. We call them the toxic test tube twins. They're in grade school, and Emily says, blonde as Nazis. Terry told the girls the divorce was my idea. I was inflexible, demanding no fun. I told them 0 about his screwing around, because I was ashamed to admit that no matter how much and how good I gave, it wasn't enough. 2 hours was the amount of time the lifeguard at the YMCA estimated Emily had been swimming before she passed out last year and nearly drowned. 5 minutes was the amount of time Emily estimated she was unconscious. 1 second is how far away Emily swears she was from going into the light. Because Emily wasn't living with me and had long ago stopped recording her gains and losses on a piece of graph paper taped on the bathroom wall, I didn't know until then that she had dropped below 75 pounds. 75 pounds was the magic number. It meant she could be checked into the eating disorders wing at the Melrose Institute. That made 2 times in 6 years. 16 days after she was released, she moved into her own apartment. She bought her own scale, light and high tech, that measured with digital precision down to the ounce, as well as calculated your body fat. In comparison, my own scale, a large gray slab with a needle that wavered uncertainly, seemed out of the Stone Age, as precise as using a sundial for a stopwatch. The hospital is 1 hour and 45 minutes away. I bought the complete works of Stephen King on CD for the car ride back and forth. Vampires, witches, ghosts, tales of the undead dead terrorizing the innocent. Each day another monster claimed another victim, and the hero got closer to slaying it. The hospital where my mother is bedridden is 20 minutes from my home. She sleeps a lot. Some days all she will eat is a gallon of vanilla Haagen-Dazs. She has a sweet tooth. When I visit, we sit outside the hospital on a bench so she can smoke. 3 cigarettes an hour, her tank of oxygen, which she drags everywhere, sitting just inside the door, like a chaperone past caring. When I told my mother that Emily was in the hospital too, she sighed, "It's such a shame you weren't able to keep that husband of yours. He was so dashing, and he made such a swell old-fashioned." She shook her head with grave disappointment in me. "Those poor, poor girls, but you know you did spoil them. I told you if you pick up a baby every time it cries, it will grow up thinking, every time it cries, someone will pick it up." She put her hand on my leg. "Now look at you. Look at how well you turned out." I know she's old, sick too. Still, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to never see my mother again. Amount of money I would inherit, 0. Amount of money Emily's 90-day stay cost me, $40,000. Amount my insurance company would pay, $10,000. 5 was the number of group therapy sessions Emily took part in each week. 4, the number of one-on-one sessions with a psychiatrist. 3 meetings with a nutritionist. The number of times she was tied to her bed during her stay, only 1. Given her medical history, Emily's chances of ever being able to have a baby are 1 in 1,000. The internist at Melrose was the first of 3 doctors to tell me that, and I wanted to cry. How could Emily not have a daughter someday? It was like hearing your child would never be happy. The age of the unmarried doctor who so glibly gave me this news, maybe 26. Number of children, you can bet 0. Emily might have dated him. It happened all the time, right? Pretty girl, cute doctor. I liked the idea. A doctor husband, one who could perform CPR, set broken bones, prescribe painkillers. Someone I could trust to take care of her. At 23, she was one of the older girls in the program, a seasoned pro among teenagers. During group therapy, the mothers and daughters sat in a circle. You could tell that the mothers had made an effort to look nice, no sweats or sneakers. The mothers wear lipstick. We do our hair. We don't look like the parents visiting children in other parts of the hospital. The daughters, dressed in regulation blue gowns that hit just below the knee, stared icily at us, like gang members, cracking their knuckles. Shivs made from melted down toothbrushes hidden in their thick woolly socks. Their matching hospital bands like friendship bracelets. For us, the girls recalled in poetic detail their inaugural purge, and they did so with the nostalgia of a first kiss. Masters now, some boasted that the simple act of kneeling and bringing 2 fingers towards their mouth could trigger their gag reflex. One said she could make herself vomit by simply thinking the word meatball. They talked shop, amphetamines, ipecac, enemas. Emily flashed her scars, showed off the tooth she had chipped binging on frozen eclairs. Even here, especially here, it was a competition, a race. It was simple math. The one who lost the most weight won. The thing is, to win is to die. So you don't even get the trophy. The mothers weren't allowed to cry, just witness. This isn't about you right now, the leader would tell us. How is it not about us? Did I mention that I'm in love? Thank you. So surely you must have a question for me other than how fast can I drink this glass of wine, which is really, really... Ask me a question. It took me a long time to write this book. I feel very attached to this book. Before I wrote this book, I spent 2.5 years writing a novel that I abandoned, which, as writers, you know, is a really big deal to give up something like that, right? It was part of a 2-book deal, and the first book is a collection of linked short stories, which is kind of what I do. It's like a novel and stories. But they insisted that the second book be an actual novel. And I really don't have any interest in writing novels. People always ask me in interviews, like, so when are you going to write a novel? When are you going to, when are you going to, like, cut your hair? No, be like, when are you going to marry a man, right? I'm not a novelist. It doesn't interest me. I'm like the one person in the world that doesn't want to write a novel. Just, maybe it's because I've been married for so long and I'm monogamous. I've been in a monogamous relationship for over 2 decades. Like, I want to fool around on the page. I want to have some fun. I want lots of partners, I guess. But in any case, I was writing this novel, and it was going to be, I was thinking it's like Tom Wolfe on the Upper West Side as a mother, and it's about race relations, and it's about class, and it's a piece of crap is what it is. But every day, like, I go or as much as I could, I'd like go and I'd work, and I'd think, oh, I have to work on the book. I have to work on the book. I have to work on the book. Never, I can't wait to write, or I need to get back in that world. It was always the book. I didn't even have a title. That's so funny. I just realized that I didn't even give it a title. And so after 2.5 years, I showed it to my agent because, you publish a book, they want another book, and 2.5 years, they seem to think, is a good amount of time in which one can write a book. And she read it, and she said, this is fantastic. None of the things that you do well are in evidence here. And I was like, oh. And it was funny because it was, as soon as she said it, I knew that was true. That I had been sitting and working on this book and typing this book, but I didn't love this book. I didn't care about this book. And it was really terrifying to me. She said, don't panic. It'll be okay. I'm sure we can fix it. It's just a first draft. But I thought, no, I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to abandon it. And it was terrifying, but it was also really, really liberating. It helped that during the time I was writing that book, I was also writing the stories that would become this novel and stories, which I bet a lot of you do. I mean, I write in part to like figure out the world, to figure out how I feel about things. And at the time I had become a mother. And so I was sleeping at funny times, a little crazy. I had a lot of throw up in my hair. I guess those are all perfect reasons to write, right? Or perfect place to start from. No, but I mean, I write to figure out the world, figure out how I'm feeling. And so I was writing these stories that would become this book while I was writing the novel. So I guess I was kind of not being monogamous. I was cheating on the novel with the stories. Not quite the angel I thought I was. You're not surprised to hear that. And so so that would become this book. I just felt like I couldn't put a book out into the world that I didn't feel had my bloody fingerprints on it. You know, I teach too, and so I'm constantly yelling at my students, like, you're competing with 1,000 channels. You want to write a book that only you could write. You have to write something that feels immediate. Like, don't write somebody else's story. Write the thing that has to be written. And if there aren't some of your bloody fingerprints on the page, I'm not interested, frankly. And what I had done was typed something out for 2.5 years that was a piece of crap. And I thought, I will look like the biggest hypocrite in the world once they look at this book, because they will be like, she's not in this book. She risked nothing in writing this book. There was not one point in that book where my heart raced, or I thought, oh, I shouldn't say that, or oh, I'm feeling a little naked there. I was just, I'm so clever, ha ha ha. Who could imagine that? Which is not a good place to write from. That kind of ego or cleverness. Yes.
What made you have a character that is anorexic?
This character? When I was Well, it's a big deal that what I realized, I didn't realize this until it was pointed out to me. I'm not going to pretend like I knew. Like I said, I'd had a child and she was a girl. And I guess because I really do write for lots of reasons, but one of them is to figure out how I feel about the universe. Also as a way to kind of protect people from the things that I'm feeling, like if you're feeling angry or you're thinking something that you don't really think you should share with other people, it all goes into my writing. And I had met a woman. I guess I should back up. I grew up with lots of girls who had serious eating disorders. I mean, really, like a girl who was a friend who used to live on my hall when I was in college had a heart attack and died once she started eating again. So I grew up with lots of girls that had these issues, but it wasn't until, and I always thought, oh, it's their mother. Like they had these horrible mothers. And then I became a mother and I started spending time with other mothers and I started seeing women who had daughters who were much older. And it never really occurred to me that like you would have an eating disorder and it wouldn't go away, that you wouldn't get cured, but that it would be something that is forever. I mean, why would it just go away? It's not like one day you wake up, you're like, wait a minute, body image. I've got great body image. No. And so I became aware of mothers who were really struggling with older daughters who were having eating disorders. I was aware of there being little girls who had eating disorders, and I was spending time with the moms. I wasn't on the side of the girls who were starving themselves and making themselves sick and exercising excessively. And so I wondered, why does anyone ever tell the mom's story? Why is the mom always the monster? And I thought, well, I'm going to tell her story. And what I realized when I started looking at the stories, or it was pointed out to me, all the stories in the book are about a type of woman, right? A kind of, like a stereotype. The first story is about a girl who's labeled the slut. This would be like the mother of the anorexic who's the monster. There's a mother who is a very reluctant mother, who actually is the page in this story, comes back in a later story, and she's feeling very ambivalent about having had a child. Because she had a very successful career. So what I wanted to do was write about all these women that we think we know. It's like, oh, working woman, I know you. Oh, stay-at-home mom, I know you. Oh, anorexic, I know you. And tell the stories that we don't hear, but we all know. I mean, that's what interests me as a writer, is to write about the stuff that everybody knows, but nobody wants to talk about. I don't know. That's just the way that I'm wired. So I started writing that as a way to tell the mother's story. That felt important to me. I thought someone should tell the mother's story. She's also the only character in the book that doesn't have a name. Everybody else has a name, but not her. Yes?
You always write in first person?
No, I don't. I oftentimes write, however, in this book, everything is first person except there's a story that's written in the third person that's written from the point of view of a young woman who has been raped. And so that story is not told in the first person because I thought, she's already been violated. I don't want you in her head. like, let's just like give her some space, because it's about that space. It's not about the rape. It's about how the family deals with it and her friends and how she ends up dealing with it. It's also in part about Alzheimer's. Doesn't sound like I hate saying what my story's about because they sound so bloody bleak. It's like, yeah, and this one is about, this one's about eating disorders. This one's about lying to your kids. This one's about, a sorority girl on a bender and has sex with 3 people in one night. It's like they're fun. I mean, not funny, but I think they're funny. So I oftentimes write in the first person because the way that I write, and I'm sure some of you do this too, I write in the first person because that's how I hear their voices first. I'm definitely one of those writers who is taking dictation. I'm not like Faulkner with his butcher paper out on the ground and making all those charts and graphs. I don't know where I'm going. I'm terrible. As soon as I make an outline, I throw it out. I don't like anyone to tell me what to do, even me, which is probably why it takes me so long to write a damn book. But no, it's a good way for me to get that voice in my head. And it's funny, but in the new book, I've really been pushing myself out of that zone and writing a little bit in the first person to kind of get the characters' voices in my head, but then immediately switching. I also like the second person, which I know you're not supposed to admit, but I actually love writing in the second person. Yes?
It's so funny that you say that because you're such a conscious structure maker.
Oh, I am.
To be. So how do those two things coexist?
Well,
Dictated to planning.
I'm definitely, you've heard this Ray Bradbury quote, no doubt, throw up and then clean up. I make really big first drafts and then cut them in half and then cut them more. I'm not meticulously writing every line. It takes me a long time to write something, in part because I have this other voice in my head. Unless I get up really early and start working and don't have any, and I'm really in a deep groove, I have these little voices that say, well, why are you working? What are you doing? Why you? Why does anyone care what you think? Really? We're going to continue to do this? We're going to continue to work on this? And so I have to write a lot to quiet that voice down, to get past that resistance, which I now understand is in part resistance. There's no reason that your unconscious wants you to write, right? It's painful. If you're doing it well, it's like you're showing people naked pictures of yourself bent over cleaning the tub, right? If you're doing it well, those are the early drafts. Then we do them with a lot of airbrushing for the final galleys. But no, so I write a lot and then I cut a lot. But it takes me a long time sometimes to figure out what my story is, because I don't set out knowing where I'm going to go. So I sometimes, find that, okay, if you're on the path, you'll see one thing. But if you go off the path, you'll see something great, maybe something very dangerous. But then you have to go back and, you have to cut a real true path. And I don't like, I despite the way that I talk, I would edit myself if I could as I'm going. I don't like big, sprawling, lazy stories or novels. In fact, I think a lot of novels would make really great short stories, but the writer is lazy or not willing to make that, or an egotist. No, I don't know. So no, I cut a lot. I do. You can't actually, I think, call like every time you work on something and make changes a draft necessarily. We're talking to someone recently about like what really constitutes a draft of something, how much real work. But I have things that are like draft, Joy of Cooking 13, Joy of Cooking 25. I mean, up to literally 25. Because I'm making change. And I made changes right now reading it. I'm sure you all do this too. When you have to stand up in front of a group of people and read something. And it's the best way in the world to figure out where the writing is working and not working for me is to stand there and try and read it. Because if it's bad, I won't say it out loud. Or if there's like a dead spot, I'll just skip ahead. I'm like, oh, this part here isn't that good. I'll just skip down here. And it's like, oh, if that part isn't very good and you won't read it, why don't you cut it? So I don't know how I got off on telling you that. This is the problem when you ride the bus for so long with drink wine and ate some cookies. Famous Amos and white wine, proud sponsors of the Elissa Schappell tour. So I cut a lot. Cut. Yes.
This is another structural question, I guess. So you free draft and then you cut. And you're reading through and you see a hole that needs to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
do you free draft that, or is there a different kind of writing that you do when you see a whole line?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's interesting because it really does get to that idea of structure. The first thing I do after I get through the first draft, and I've really learned that the best thing for me to do is to write that first draft as fast as possible. Because I find that what I do, and I think a lot of other people do, is I used to spend a lot of time on the beginning, thinking if I can get the beginning right, the engine right, then the rest of the book will just write itself, the rest of the story. So what I've been ending up with are really overwritten beginnings, pretty decent middles, and then I get freaked out that I have to finish, and like, oh, just all of the meaning of the entire story just rests on these last few pages. So what I think about is, as soon as I've got that whole thing, I first thing I look at is the structure, because really, I mean, structure is story. Structure, you need a fabulous structure. And so pretty much like the filling of the holes happens pretty early on. What I do is I really, it sounds so goofy, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. Why not? I do think of, especially with the short story, as it almost being like a one act. It's like, okay, I only have a certain number of characters that I can have on the stage. I have to pay every single one of them, pay extra for nudity and any kind of stunts. So I think, okay, how many of these people can I actually use? When possible, I combine them. How many scenes do I have? And that's where I see the holes. It's like, okay, I'm going to start them off here in this place. I'm going to start them off here. Here's something terrible is going to happen. Here we're going to make it even worse. Here we're going to kind of get them out of trouble, and then maybe we'll get them out of trouble. The place that I find that I have those holes is oftentimes in that turn right before the end, where I know where I'm going, but then I don't like write that scene. So I do go back and I just draft that. I mean, I just write it in. I think where I get into real trouble, I think a lot of people do, is when I look at the story long after it's become a thing and it's really clear, this is the first act, this is the second act, this is the third act, this is where our resonance is, that I start like trying to put stuff in to kind of try and explain stuff. Like I start to panic. It's like, oh, I haven't done my job very well. I haven't shown enough. So now I'm going to kind of slip in a little bit of telling here, just so you know exactly what I mean. So I constantly have to guard against that. But I do. I try not to have too many. It sounds like I have so many rules. I just feel like the more that you do it, the more you learn your process. And like, there's no right process or wrong process. There's just your process. And you figure out what works for you. How can you make work and feel good about it? So I will go back and add stuff. I will write stuff in. I'm writing stuff in red pencil, when it's supposed to go off to the printer. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's just my anxiety, or something that I'm adding because I think I'm being really smart, and inevitably you can read it, you can see it. It's like, who was it who said, like, before, it was a Coco Chanel who said, before you leave the house, take off one piece of jewelry. It's like that. That's what I should be doing. Instead, I'm like, I think I'll put those antlers on. Yeah. Let's put the antlers on. What else? It doesn't have to be an accessories question. Yes.
You write in different genres.
Yes.
How do you segregate your, the ideas into the particular genres? I mean, you have an idea. Does it present itself as, oh, this is a piece of fiction, or this is
That's a good question. I do write a lot of different stuff. Obviously, a lot of what I do is, I write for Vanity Fair, do the book stuff, and I write a lot of criticism in that way. But I also have started writing a whole lot of political stuff, and so I'm never interested in reading fiction that comes across as political, right? I mean, I am a very political person, and I think my book is political in some ways. I mean, certainly judging by some people's reactions to it. But that has been the big struggle for me, is how to make the stories about human beings, not about ideas. It's like, I want the reader to read the story and have an experience, not be told something. And so that's been a little hard for me. There's a story in the first book that is about a young woman who has had several abortions. And that story for me felt like a political book. I mean, a political story, because it's a pro-choice story, but it's a very sad story, and it's a dark story. It's, again, a hilarious story. A dog eats a sock. This too shall pass. But I think I have to be careful about that, is figuring out like what is real political writing, and just a lot of, some of that is satire, and what is for fiction. I find though that like really what I care about most in the world is writing fiction. It's a place where I feel most myself. There's a great Gloria Steinem quote where she says, the only time I feel, what did she say? I guess it's when I'm writing is the only time I feel like I shouldn't be doing something else. I feel like when I'm writing fiction, it's the only time I shouldn't be doing something else. Which has been a struggle with, having kids and teaching and, having to make time for that. Like, how do you justify spending all this time writing when there are all these other things that demand your time? But really, writing fiction is the first thing that I want to do when I wake up with that brain. And then I use the rest of my brain for all the other stuff, generally. It's what I try and do. But it's hard. It's a struggle. I mean, you have to write about what you care about, right? You have to write about, like, what you need to write about, what feels really immediate. And I think part of the reason that I haven't been writing as much on this new book is because I haven't been writing so much about politics, because that to me feels so immediate. I don't know if that answered your question at all. I feel like I'm just Miss Overshare tonight. How about this? I don't know. No, it's hard, Miss Overshare. Yeah, Elissa Schappell. Yes.
Where did the political pieces appear?
Well, they appear on Salon, mostly, or on a place called The Weaklings. I also write a lot on, I have a page that I write on a lot. A lot during the election cycle. And I have my things that I care about. I mean, I have my pet issues. And I'm thinking a lot about that, but I don't ever want to be like, oh, you know what, I want to write a story that's, an issue story. I just don't think that's where good stories come from. I mean, good stories come from, not to sound too woo-woo, but they come from, suddenly you're like, I have a story I need to write. I've never trusted the stories that I think up. I trust the story that I sit down and it's like, okay, I think, it's like I have an idea for a character or I have a line of dialogue. There's a story in the book that actually helped me understand the entire, what the entire book was. I had this voice of this young woman who's a party girl, like one of those girls on Girls Gone Wild. I always saw them and like just wanted to slap them, like, what are you doing? But, whatever. But I had this voice in my head of being like, write about me. Why don't you write about me? In a first-person voice. And what the big dangers in writing from the first-person voice is everyone's like, oh yeah, that's you. Because, writers don't have imaginations. We can't make this stuff up. I am all these people, all of them, absolutely bats. And I kept saying, like, no, I don't want to write this story. I'm not interested in you. I know who you are. You're just a joke. And then I thought, you know what you're doing? You're just dismissing her the way the whole culture dismisses her. The way everybody else says, I know who you are. You're a joke. What are you doing? This entire book, what have you been doing? You've been trying to write about the lives of real women, what everybody doesn't know about these women, but we all share what our common, collective knowledge is. And so that story kind of opened everything up for me. And that was a big deal. That was a story that I felt like I had to write. And that does feel like I've gone completely off the rails. Why am I sharing that with you? I don't know. I'm going to lay down now. Just going to put my head down. That was how I figured out what the book was. And that was also how I figured out what the title was. The title actually comes from something a writing teacher once said to me. A teacher that I had gone off to study with who I really admired enormously. And you know how sometimes you give people power? Like I gave her all this power in my life. I really did. I thought, I read her book when I was in a bad place and it's an incredible book. It's beautifully written. She's a very big personality. And I thought, I'm going to go and I'm going to study with her and she's going to, she's going to save me. She's going to make me a writer. I just know this is the person who's going to change my life. And I went and I studied with her and she hated me. And I'm sure there have been lots of people in this world who have disliked me and I'm just kind of blind to it unless I dated them or slept with them or ran over their dog or something. I've never run over anybody's dog, but I have done some other bad things. But in class, she read this story that I had written while in a class with Amy Hempel, who was really kind to me and a big cheerleader and a huge part of why I'm a writer. And I had written this story and I felt really good about it. It was the first thing I had ever written that ever felt true, that I felt like I'd taken any risks, that I felt even remotely had anything to do with my own experience, which I think was really important because I didn't feel like people were writing that much about my experience. And if I'm not writing about my experience, somebody else will, and they'll get it wrong. And she read the story and she said, "What's wrong with you new little ladies of fiction like Mary Gateskill?" And I don't remember who else she said. I just wrote that one down because I was writing so I wouldn't cry. She said, "I don't know what's wrong with you. Why do you write about these women who have all these problems? They have drug problems, and you're writing about rape. And don't you understand when you do this, you're setting a bad example? Don't you know you have a moral responsibility as a writer to write stories that will provide future, roadmaps for young women to lead their lives?" And I sat there and I thought, oh, wow, I did not know that was my responsibility. If that is the case, we're all screwed. But I felt terrible. I had never thought about my job as a writer. And understand, it's the only thing I've ever done. It's the only thing I have any talent for at all, any wage earning skill. It's the only thing I've ever done. It's always been a very personal thing. And now I'm supposed to be doing this to change the lives of young women, to be instructive in some way. I do not presume that I'm the person to do that. And I was incredibly hurt. And I really stopped writing I was writing, but I wasn't like out writing. And I felt like, oh, so I'm not a writer anymore. And as you know, like the number one way that we lose power is we give it away to somebody. And so I gave her all my power. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't do this because this woman that I admire said that I'm a bad person. I mean, literally, that's what she was saying. She's like, but as she was talking, I wrote down, roadmaps for young women, blah, blah, blah. And years later, when I was going through some stuff, I saw that, like, roadmaps for young women. I thought, well, I'm writing these stories that are all these stories about not just young women, but much older women, generations of women. And, oh my God, that's my title. But, roadmaps for building better girls isn't as good as blueprints for building better girls. So that's where that came from. That was. Do you guys have teachers though? I do. I am really figuring out that there are people who are really good teachers for you, and people that are less good teachers, and you can learn something from both of them. But you really can't listen to what the less good ones have to say if what they're saying is that you're a piece of shit. Anyone that makes you want to stop writing is a bad teacher. But at the time, I couldn't really hear that because I was feeling too vulnerable.
Can you talk at all about your literary magazine?
Oh, absolutely. As you know, as a writer, you have to have lots of jobs. So when I was in graduate school, I started working at the Paris Review with George Plimpton, which was a fantastic job. I mean, I learned so much from George. And when my daughter was born, I stopped working there. And I was imagining I would go back to the Paris Review. Then one day I got a phone call from this gentleman who is out in Portland, Oregon. His name is Win McCormick, and he had been one of the original backers of the Nation, and was involved with Mother Jones, and he wanted to start a literary magazine. And my first response was, no, I don't want to do that. I just left the Paris Review. Why would I do that? Why would I go and work in another literary magazine? But he gave us, we started talking about it a little bit, and it was kind of exciting, the idea that you would have, you'd have a voice and that we could do what we wanted to do. I'm talking about doing this with my husband, Rob Spillman, who had before been at the New Yorker. And so we just kind of started talking about it. Like, what kind of magazine would you make? And we figured, how many people really read literary magazines? Unless they know someone that's in them. Not very many, I can assure you. People read the Paris Review, but there aren't that many people reading the Prairie Schooner. So we figured that what we wanted to do is we wanted to make a literary magazine for people who wouldn't necessarily read literary magazines. So I also work at Vanity Fair. I thought, well, people pick up magazines for what they know is going to be in there. That's part of the problem with a literary magazine. Like, you look at it, you're like, I don't know who 3/4 of these people are. Yes, I want to pick this up. I want to read that Dybeck story, or I want to read that, Cheever memoir, whatever. I want to read all that stuff, but I don't know who these other people are. So we figured we would create something that it's a quarterly, every season you would be able to look at it and say, oh, you know what? I don't necessarily know who all these people are, but they have columns. So there's always they'll be writing about food. There's writing about lost books. There's writing about pilgrimages. There are all these things that repeat every issue. So you do know when you pick it up what you're going to get. And people like that. People like columns. They like knowing what they're going to get. And we wanted to make something that was going to be really beautiful. And it's a beautiful magazine. And the way that it's laid out at the time, no one else was doing that, so that it was really readable. And the idea also that it's so sad. As writers, sometimes I feel like we're the only people that remember some of these wonderful books that existed that nobody reads anymore. And so part of what we wanted to do was to do this lost and found section, which if you're ever looking to get published in Tin House, it's the best way in the world to get your foot in the door, because they're small pieces. They're written by people who are passionate about what they're writing about, and invariably someone pitches them, and just on sheer enthusiasm, we end up accepting it. You know, it's a place for writers to hustle their agenda, talk about the books they love, talk about the art they love, talk about the stuff that matters, drink recipes, you know, food. That's all good stuff. So that was how that came about. Now we're about to enter our 17th year. We have a really great writing festival every summer out in Portland at Reed University, and we have a book imprint, Tin House Books, which is pretty fantastic. It's been great. I would never have imagined that. I would never have thought about that. But it's really cool. It's amazing what you can do with a bunch of, and really, because it really is, we're not able to pay a whole lot. It's a bunch of people who really love art and really love writing and are fiercely committed to that. People who really have a real stake in having the written word be in the world. That's a big deal. We're really lucky. Yes.
Given all those responsibilities, teaching Tin House, children, I guess just a practical question, how much time and do you get to spend on your own writing, and do you feel like, wow, 1 hour and it's good, or do you feel kind of conflicted being pulled here and there?
Absolutely. Yeah. The way that I have tried to deal with that, and this year has been, this semester has been particularly crazy because I'm teaching at Columbia and NYU in their MFA programs, and I teach in a low residency. So that's a lot. But what I find is really the only way for me to be fully present in my personal life and in my writing life is to say, really realistically, set times that are sacred times when I can absolutely write and times when I absolutely will not write. So it used to be, before I was teaching quite so much, that there would be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday were studio days. I get up in the morning, get the kids out. You know, I also, though, I have a fantastic husband who's like, does more than half of the work. This is a huge part of it. If you have a partner who can do this with you, I'm really aware of that. And so we would, on those days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would go to the studio at 8 o'clock and I would stay there till 2:30 or 3. And all I would do is write fiction. That's it. And then I'd come home, do stuff, have dinner. And then using the nighttime brain, I would do my money work and I would do whatever other kind of stuff needed to be done. There's one day a week when I would put aside time. So it'd be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it must have been Thursday would be the day when I would be able to have lunch with people. I would talk on the phone. Those would be days I'd make doctor's appointments, that kind of stuff. That would be one day for all that stuff. If I was going to go buy new shoes, it happened on that day. Seriously. And then on the weekends, there'd be no work at all. No writing at all. If I'm on like a crazy deadline, that's after everybody goes to bed. And I mean everybody goes to bed. And that's fine because I don't sleep. But I found that when I was with my family and I was writing and trying to kind of cram in an hour here or there, I resented them. And I loved them and I felt guilty. I was like, how can I resent this? This is terrible. But then I did. And then I would go to work and I'd feel bad. I'd feel guilty. Why am I not at home? Why aren't I not with my children? They grow up so fast. All that stuff that people say, it's such a cliche that you roll your eyes at until you have children. Then you're like, oh, they grow up so fast. But really the only way has been to like build this really artificial way of dealing with reality. And whether that, and this semester, it's really sad, but it's basically like I have like one day that is solely devoted to fiction. And that'll be very different this summer. Like I'm going to teach in June in Florence, which just sounds ridiculous, and then have the rest of the summer and then just teach one class in the fall. And then I'll get back to my old schedule. But I also find if you're really clear with what you need and what you want for work, it's like these 3 days, I go to the studio and I work, and this is what I do, everybody's fine. Like, nobody wants to listen to you complain. Nobody wants to hear how, put upon you are or see you sulk. No, you say, these 3 days I go to work, and they're like, great, fine. And then the time when you're not there and you're at home, you're just better. You're present. I hated not being present in either life, but it is really hard. And to say that it's not is bullshit. But I mean, what do you do? I mean, I don't know a better way. I mean, can you cram an hour in here and there? I can't.
No, it's got to be that sacred time where phone's off, internet's off.
Yes, internet especially. My husband installed this thing on my computer where it turns off the internet, but it won't turn it back on until a certain time. It won't. Like, I've tried. I've actually had people in the workspace where I work be like, come here, can you fix this? And they're like, please. The Huffington Post, we're talking. But yeah, no, but don't you find if you make it clear that that's the case, people honor that. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. I don't know why until I didn't want to ask for it thinking, well, no one's going to think that's okay. But as soon as you ask for it in a calm voice, people know you're serious and will do it. But no, I can't work an hour here and an hour there. I mean, you don't get anything. I can't make anything worth reading that way.
May I follow up?
Please.
What if you find yourself, some character inside your mind just talking to you, it's time to write it down before...
Oh, then you write that shit down. I don't care. Unless the child needs a Heimlich maneuver, no.
So that even can happen on a weekend?
That can happen in the middle of sex. That can happen anytime. Like right now, if I had an idea, in water, I'd write it. No, but they're so rare, those gifts. When you get those gifts, and I do think there are times when we're able to make new work, and other times that are really about editing. And it's scary when there's no new stuff coming in. It's like being in love. You start working on something and you're really into it, and suddenly it's like the universe just wants to give you gifts. It's just like universal synchronicity. Everywhere you look, that's a line of music I need. Oh my God, I didn't know that fact. Everything comes into you and goes into the work. And then at some point, if you're not open like that and you're not making work, that goes away. Or I have experienced that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I used to have a soundtrack for my life and it's gone, and it can be really lonely and awful. So I feel like in times when you have that voice and you're able to make work, you need to listen to that. And I also remember nothing. So I write everything down. My poor handbag, if anyone found it, well, they'd know it was mine, certainly. But I mean, there's stuff scrawled everywhere. And in that case, yeah, I'm afraid that I am no angel. I would, absolutely. They're older now. I would seize the moment. They're too rare.
Did you ever do stand-up? And are you just
No. Never. No. At one point when I was a little girl, I said something like that to my mother, and she said, I don't know, I'd like seen Gilda Radner or something, or I don't remember who it was. I was like, oh, that looks like fun. Wise ass, because I was also like this big. I'm wearing heels now. I was like that big. And she said, no, those people have had terrible childhoods. Those people, now you would not want to be a comedian. Those people are miserable people. They all have horrible families. And I was like, oh, well, scratch that. No, actually, no. It makes me nervous, and I can't even go to the Chuckle Hut or that sort of thing. I can't watch people make free throws like at halftime in a basketball game. No, I could never do that. I would have to be so sedated and in a diaper and strapped to a gurney, because I'm not funny like that. I'm just anxious. It's all about making the buffer. What else? Yes. I seem like I should have called on you first, although you didn't have your hand up, but that would have been weird.
It's sort of related to Tin House. I don't know how many people follow the Vita count, but Tin House is one of 3 magazines with an equivalent ratio of male to female writers.
I love you.
So I was wondering why you think more magazines haven't followed Tin House's example, and how big of a problem is this for young women writers?
Oh. Well, part of that problem may be that they don't have me standing over them with a whip being like, what's this about? What she's talking about is that proportionally magazines, literary magazines, book coverage in major newspapers is skewed very heavily towards men, obviously. And And these numbers that have come out from Vita, which their job, part of what they do is they follow these numbers, who's publishing what and who's reviewing what. And Tin House is one of the few magazines, I think you said 3, that have numbers that are equal. We publish as many women as men. That was not always the case. We were never bad, but we were not great. I mean, great being, great. I think in part the reason that we're different is that we made a real concerted effort to publish more women. And it's not hard. Here's the problem. The problem is that when people send stuff to a magazine, that it's not through an agent, that's just like through what we call like the slush pile, unsolicited manuscripts, that's equally men and women. When a woman is rejected, she is far less likely to submit again. When we publish, and men will submit over and over again. When we publish a man, it's very likely that very soon after that, he'll send us another story. When we publish a woman, she does not send us another story necessarily. The idea being like, well, look, you just published one. I didn't want to, figured you'd had enough of me. And that is part of the problem. So that what we've had to do is follow up with people that we've published and say, hey, and this is across the board. This is, we're calling Amy Bender, being like, hey, Amy, we'd love to publish you again. Oh, you sure you just had something? Yeah, I've got something here. What about that? So some of it is that, is just that women, that's part of the problem, is that women aren't as likely to resubmit, or even if they've been accepted, submit. The other problem is that I think I don't even know if it's a problem. It's just reality is that we grow up reading a lot more books written by men than by women. And so we have those voices in our head. Those are the books we grew up loving. No great conspiracy theory here. So I know that like if you're going to review a book or write about a book, we're just as likely to more likely for men to review a book written by a man. I mean, men, don't necessarily read books written by women or review books written by women, and women will read books written by anybody, right? I mean, men, women, clowns. And I think that's part of the problem too. And that's just the way we've been raised. Unless I am missing it, and I think I would know, there's no like meeting in a secret like He-Man Women Haters Cave. It's like, hey, let's not review any women's books or give them any prizes. It's like, what's out there, right? It's just like, what's out there? So Vita's big thing is trying to get more women out there and to get more attention paid to women's books. And it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. That's where the politics are. Yes.
Tessa Hadley. She's in the New Yorker all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of her writing?
I like Tessa Hadley. You're not Tessa Hadley, are you? No, I like her, and she's not in the New Yorker nearly enough. The New Yorker is one of the worst in terms of publishing women and having women, just plain old women writers. Having a Roz Chast cartoon does not gender equality make. No, but Tessa's great. I like her prose particularly. She's a great stylist. What else? Can you go home? Of course you can go home.
Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. And again, I have to thank you for waiting for me, and I do apologize very, very, very much. You've been very, very kind and patient.